Julia stood in the observation deck of the Galactic Military Academy, her arms crossed as she watched the testing chamber below. The crystalline walls hummed with energy, and dozens of alien cadets from across the known universe had gathered to witness what they called the human trial. "You don't have to do this," Oscar said quietly beside her, his hand resting on the railing. His brown eyes reflected concern, but Julia knew him well enough to see the pride hiding beneath it. "Someone has to show them what we're made of," she replied, her voice steady. "Besides, you'd do the same thing if they'd picked you." Oscar couldn't argue with that. When the Academy had announced that humans, the newest species to join the Galactic Coalition, would undergo the standard pain tolerance assessment, the entire compound had buzzed with speculation. Humans were weak, they said, fragile, their bones broke easily, their skin tore like paper, and they died from the simplest infections. How could such delicate creatures possibly pass the testing chamber door hissed open, and Julia stepped inside. The room fell silent as she walked to the center platform, her academy uniform crisp and her posture around the chamber. Holographic displays showed her vital signs to the assembled crowd. Proctor Vexter, a towering Crathary with scales like obsidian, activated his neural interface. Cadet Julia Martinez of Earth. His voice reverberated through the chamber. "You understand the parameters of this assessment?" "Yes, sir," Julia responded, her voice clear. "The pain tolerance assessment measures a soldier's ability to maintain cognitive function and combat effectiveness under extreme duress. You will experience incrementally increasing levels of neural stimulation designed to simulate battlefield injuries. Most species tap out at level 7. The Crathary military record is level 12. You may withdraw at any time by verbal command." Julia nodded once. "Understood, sir." Vexter's scaled face was unreadable as he initiated the sequence. "Beginning assessment, level 1. A tingle ran through Julia's nervous system, barely noticeable, like static electricity. She stood perfectly still, her breathing even. Level 2. The sensation intensified, becoming a persistent ache in her muscles. Julia's jaw tightened imperceptibly. Up in the observation deck, Oscar watched the biometric readings. Her heart rate had barely elevated. A Diluvian cadet beside him chittered nervously, its translator rendering the sound. "She shows no reaction. Is the equipment malfunctioning?" "Level 3, Vexter announced. Now it felt like fire ants crawling under her skin. Julia's fingers flexed once, then stilled. In the crowd, whispers spread. Most species showed visible distress by level 3. The levels continued. 4 felt like her bones were grinding together. 5 was like being stabbed with hot needles across every inch of skin. 6 made her teeth ache as if her entire skull was being compressed. Julia's breathing had quickened, but she remained standing, her eyes fixed on the far wall. "Level 7, Vexter said, and for the first time, there was a note of something surprise, respect in his voice. The pain exploded through Julia's neural pathways like lightning. It was the sensation of burning, freezing, breaking, and tearing all at once. Her knees buckled slightly, and she heard gasps from the observation decks. But she didn't fall. She didn't cry out. Instead, she slowly straightened, rolled her shoulders back, and looked directly at Proctor Vexter. "Are we starting now?" she asked, her voice slightly strained but clear. The chamber erupted in shocked murmurs. Oscar found himself grinning despite his worry. That was so typically Julia, turning their expectations into a challenge. Vexter's scales rippled in what might have been the Crathary equivalent of a raised eyebrow. Level 8. It felt like every nerve in her body was on fire while simultaneously being crushed and frozen. Julia's hands clenched into fists so tight her knuckles went white. Sweat beaded on her forehead, but she remained standing. Her eyes never left Vexter's. Level 9. Julia's vision blurred. The pain was transcendent now, beyond description. Every cell in her body screamed for relief. But somewhere in the back of her mind, through the haze of agony, she thought of her grandmother who'd survived cancer treatments, her brother who'd played football through a broken collarbone, her mother who'd given birth without epidural when complications made it impossible. Humans didn't quit. Humans endured. Level 10, Vexter announced, and the crowd had gone completely silent. This was beyond what the Crathary record holder had achieved. Julia's entire body shook now, tremors running through her muscles. A thin line of blood appeared where she'd bitten through her lower lip, but she was still standing, still conscious, still defiant. Level 11. Time lost meaning. There was only the pain and Julia's iron will holding her consciousness together like a dam against a flood. Her legs were concrete pillars. Her spine was steel. Her mind was a fortress under siege, but the walls held. Through the haze, She heard Vexter's voice, distant and strange. Level 12, matching the Crathery record. Julia's vision tunneled. She could hear her own heartbeat thundering in her ears, feel every molecule of her body screaming. But she thought of Oscar watching from above, of every human who would face doubt and disrespect in this galactic coalition, of Earth, that small blue marble that had produced survivors of ice ages and plagues, world wars and worse. She opened her mouth, tasted blood, and managed 2 words: keep going. The chamber exploded with clicking whistles, roars of disbelief from a dozen species. Vexter stared at her for a long moment, then slowly deactivated the system. Assessment complete, he announced. Cadet Julia Martinez has exceeded all known records, maintaining consciousness and coherence through level 12 while requesting continuation. He paused. The human species is hereby approved for full combat training and deployment. As the pain faded, Julia's legs finally gave out. She dropped to her knees, gasping as medical personnel rushed in. Oscar was there seconds later, sliding down from the observation deck via emergency ladder, pushing through the crowd to reach her side. "You absolute maniac," he said. But he was smiling, his eyes bright with tears. Julia looked up at him, managing a weak grin through bloody lips. "Somebody had to show them," she whispered. "We're not just fragile, we're survivors." Around them, alien cadets stared at the human with new eyes. Fear, yes, but also respect, and perhaps grudging admiration. Humanity had passed its first test, and the galaxy would never underestimate them again.